Welcome to the Trailhead, where trails start and stories unfold.
One, two, three.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Now here's JD.
In our latest episode from the Waypoints series, we sat down with Colorado 4x4 Rescue and Recovery, peeling back the layers of what makes the off-roading community's premier recovery organization tick. Kimi McBride and Jeff Tyson were with us, discussing the organization and sharing their stories. Kimmy's journey from an EMT passionate about off-roading to a critical communicator for the group, and Jeff's evolution from environmental engineering to off-road leadership painted a vivid picture of what gives this group heart. We delved into everything from the thrill of the complex recovery, using all of that expensive gear that we buy, the nuances of volunteer sacrifice, and the importance of community support in their mission. So listen on to hear the courage, dedication, and the adventures of Colorado 4x4 Rescue and Recovery here at the Trailhead.
Yeah, so, kind of starting off with basically what you just put together, which was early days. It was really just a group of, friends and Good Samaritans, on Facebook, and they just kind of put together, a public page. Hey, you can reach out to us here. And as things come up, we'll put some people together and go and help. Which is how most of these kind of organizations start. And then over the years, there was more desire to work with really the sheriff's offices and be able to assist in a little bit more formal capacities. And so the organization kind of bloomed from there and became more of the search and rescue group that it is today.
And there was more need for it, too. It wasn't just a couple guys getting stuck every once in a while. It was...
Yeah, the numbers.
Like, mass need, right?
JD,
you can speak to that, too. Like, it's not...
Yeah, I can only imagine that. Like, that must have been like an exponential thing. Because it's funny, because just today I was looking at the web page, at the Facebook page. It's got, 33,000 follows or likes on it. And I'm just like, that's an insane number to me. I remember when it was, 1/33 of it.
I mean, I can tell you today we had 5 pages go out.
Yeah.
And yesterday about the same. So we've had the request for 10 missions just this weekend. Like, it's not just somebody asking for help, right? Like, there's
and this time of year, I can only imagine. Is it for those of you who are listening and are unfamiliar, Colorado is one of the more unique areas in the West that you can go from, I live here in Monument at about 7,000 feet. I'm right here just right around Monument Hill. And, the weather here is insane. And I go 2 miles south into Colorado Springs and it can be 60 degrees and it's snowing at my house.
Today it was 60 in Denver, 64.
Yeah, and then up in the upper 30s.
Yeah, and then upper 30s.
Netherlands, Switzerland trail area.
Switzerland.
And it doesn't, like, you don't have to go very far for the temperature to drop and for it to be a completely different climate for a long period of time. Yeah.
And the other thing about Colorado too is the enormous amount of public land that we have that's all accessible.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
Which leads to a lot of, backcountry need.
Yep. A lot of adventures.
I grew up in the South, so Texas and Louisiana, and we didn't have public land. Right. So if anybody got stuck, you were on your cousin's or your uncle's lease. And you just got the tractor, but you can't do that here.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're starting to frown on it a lot in Texas too now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what is the difference for you? You came from, kind of a flat area like that, and did you do any off-roading before you came to Colorado, or is that?
Yeah. So, really Louisiana, which is where I grew up, it was mostly mudding. I lived in Florida for a little while and it was, a little bit different, more sand. And, I always stayed outdoors and somewhat stayed in trouble with 4-wheel drive vehicles and 4-wheelers and ATVs and different things.
That'll happen out the Midwest in that area. Yep.
I'll give you my first kind of impression from Colorado 4x4. I was doing an overland trip, so I bought my Jeep. I was still living in Texas at the time, and had planned a 2-week-long overland trip. Was going out to Death Valley National Park, and then kind of hitting all of the Southwest on the way back through. And the first night, I had added ham radio to my rig as part of the overland deal, and had started getting kind of pings and notifications from APRS from guys that said CO 4x4 R&R, and I tuned in and listened to the monitors during a recovery. This would have been November of 2018. And so that was kind of my first inclination of, okay, there's a group out here. And then when I moved up here in 2020, I searched out the group in order to volunteer. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the amount of, I mean, you guys don't do any advertising. It's all word of mouth. I think it's all, I have always, it's one of the first things I tell people, like you need to have a winch. You need to know how to get yourself out of a bad situation and and save this number in case all of the above has failed, you should be able to, get somebody at this number. So, and it's awesome. Honestly, it's, as a person who wheels in Colorado, it's a comforting thought. Like I do well. I'm not a big fan of going out by myself in the winter. Like sure. I can imagine you guys, this is the busiest time of year for you guys.
Yeah.
Like for the next month or so, or next 2 months.
It kind of goes. I mean, obviously when there's snow on the ground, people just get stuck a lot easier. It kind of transitions a little into kind of spring and summer.
But even in the winter, it's not just 4x4s. I feel like in the summer, like the warm months, it's like Jeeps, trucks, like it's 4x4s who are getting stuck. But in the winter, it's Subarus. It's like anything, right? Because we don't just recover 4x4s. It's anybody who gets stuck.
Yeah, I mean, a perfect example, there's a dispersed camping area like 20 minutes outside of Boulder. That you can go to, and people go and camp out there. You can get there really with a 2-wheel drive vehicle during most of the year,
right?
And people go up this time of year and think, hey, I'm just going to go drive and sit out here for the evening and look, but they're in a small SUV or a crossover or something along those lines with street tires and get stuck, and those generally will get kind of phone treed out to us. Which is one of the important things of working so closely with sheriff's offices and dispatch centers is when they call, 911 or even the non-emergency number and say, hey, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, they'll forward them to us.
And the only reason you guys have been able to do that is because you've actually managed to make yourself more of a professional organization. I think that's amazing for a whole variety of reasons. I feel like the last few years, the last 5 to 10 years, the off-roading community has started to take a lot more ownership of their community. And one of the ways you do that is by making sure that you help each other out and you have an organization that can help each other out, so that even if you can't, like I'm not a 100% physical person. I can't necessarily do all of the winching jobs and things myself. I can try to help, but there's people who are far more qualified to do that stuff at, say 12,000 feet.
Yeah.
Because you guys have some interesting recoveries that go on here, and it only gets more interesting as the snow melts and people can get up higher.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
So now you guys are a 503c nonprofit.
501c3.
501c3. Excuse me. I should have double checked that. 501c3. All right, we'll get that fixed up. Fix that all in post. Fix that all up. No.
You're good.
So. And I just want to be clear. So you guys don't charge when people give you a call, but you guys are really focused on like off-road trails, right? Like Forest Service roads, not so much like you're not digging out UPS trucks,
right?
Not necessarily.
So
that's not your goal.
The scope of what? Right?
Yes, that.
the scope of what we want to do is we want to focus on the areas that are not traditionally accessible by a commercial tow truck.
Okay.
For one reason, we are all volunteers. So when we're doing close to 300 recoveries a year, we want to be able to conserve those resources for people that really need it. And we don't necessarily want to compete for those commercial services, because it's not what we do. But there's definitely a part or a point at which a commercial tow truck is limited, that they cannot go any further in order to go do some of these recoveries, and that's where we'll step in.
We fit in a very specific niche.
Yep.
Rescue.
Well,
generally,
it is a very.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's a very specific kind of terrain, right? Like there are certain parts of the terrain here. There are other states and they have different recovery groups that, they have specialized vehicles to get that. And here, that specialized vehicle is just a lifted vehicle that can actually do winching. Your typical tow truck, like we were talking about before we got on air about my TJ, and when I brought that thing limping down the mountain, it would have been a lot easier if someone could have helped me get to the tow truck, because he couldn't get up the mountain. So it's a good thing. So
it's a weird niche, right? Even like traditional search and rescue groups, they have equipment, they have tracks, they have snowmobiles and tracked vehicles and like all this extra gear.
Well, you guys are actually
in this system, right? They don't know vehicle recovery, and then we're here like on the opposite side.
Well, and
exactly.
That was one of the things that occurred early on. Was search and rescue was getting these calls referred to them, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody call in to the sheriff's office.
I'm stuck.
I'm stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they could go get the individual, but they were not recovering vehicles. And so they would get them back into town, and they would get them, safe. They would get them to services, but then they would still be calling around looking for somebody to go help, recover the vehicle.
Right.
And it became an issue too with, like the Forest Service. There were some stay the trail principles, and some safety issues. If you just found somebody in town that had an old beat up 4-wheel drive and they were like, oh yeah, I'll go pull it out. There were some concerns there, but
there was an old XJ stuck up on Geneva for probably a good. So you know which one I'm talking about then. But it was up there for a hot minute, and if they'd known that they could have called somebody to at least get them to a safe place, it would have been nice.
Yeah. And another thing, a lot of vehicles, aren't that expensive, I guess I would say. So if you're driving around in a vehicle and you paid $4 or $5 grand for it, you're not going to go pay $4 or $5 grand to have it recovered. Right. It's cheaper for you to just say it's my loss, and then you abandon the vehicle. Well, then it becomes the Forest Service problem. Right. And the more abandoned vehicles we have in the Forest Service, the more trails are going to get closed and those type of things. So that's kind of another way we try to view it, is that we're helping to keep all of these trails open and accessible.
I think that's probably a piece that isn't talked about enough, because until you mentioned it, I hadn't thought about that XJ and the fact that it was on the trail for so long before finally it got out of the way. And that's there, and because there's the other part of it too. Like there's a liability piece. Like if I'm just driving along the road, I don't necessarily just want to hook up my winch line to this truck that has been sitting there, because I just don't want to get shot. I'm being honest with you. It's Colorado. People have guns. It's what we do here in the backcountry. There are animals and there are silly people. So it's just want to avoid confrontation like that. And it'd just be nice. It's one of those things where the video behind me is Saints John, and I can only imagine some of those spots if a vehicle were to get stuck from snow or whatever else, or God forbid. I know we have some issues up there that. Did you guys do any recoveries right before the snow came? Did we have any Jeeps that were up there at the tree line that would have spent the season at the Rubicon, 22 feet under the snow?
I don't think any of that would have been that serious. I remember that one that you're talking about on the Rubicon. Caved in the roof and everything on that one.
Yeah, it was a lot of weight. Yeah.
We've got a couple we know of that are stuck in the backcountry that we'll go get.
Yeah,
in May.
We'll go get in the spring. We either made attempts on them, or it was too late by the time they had called us. It was a week before they actually found out that we existed, and they give us a call.
That's harsh.
There's a couple that by the time we were notified, there was 4 feet of extra snow on the ground. It's just going to be there.
So it's not that bad, but they're stuck. We'll get to them in the spring sometime.
So just as a matter of, because this is a curious question for me that is slightly off topic, but so is there, do these guys have a lot of damage after a season of that stuff, up in the high country and the cold, or is it just kind of it's been sitting on the parking lot?
I don't
Depends
know
on the
that
vehicle,
that
though.
we get kind of the extreme snow that you would see. I mean, there's some areas on the western slope that get, several more feet than what we usually see here in the Front Range, but
Yeah.
I don't think you're getting the tens of feet like what you would see.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I'm not even just talking about the weight. I'm just talking about just the winter up there is harsh.
Yeah, it's a very vehicle dependent, and we also, like, total transparency wise, we don't necessarily get that, like, aftermath right up from the shop of, like, everything that's gone bad, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
get them off the trail, and depending on what it was, how long it's been sitting, might say, like, hey man, like, you do you, but we really recommend that you get it towed to a shop.
Why don't you get this put on a flatbed and we'll figure this out later? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's in your best interest to tow this to a shop and see what happens.
And we'll do, a little bit of due diligence just from a safety perspective. If we can go out there, we know a vehicle's been out there for a while. We'll bring an extra battery, we'll bring some jumper cables, and see if we can get it cranked right. And if it can drive out on its own, that's way safer than us trying to tow it out.
Yeah.
So we do a little bit of that, but we're also not mechanics.
Well, you don't really want to get into that business either.
Once we hit like a point of like, hey, we tried the batteries, we checked fuses, we did a few other things. It's not going to crank. Let's tow it out. And
we've kind of done your brakes plus check, and we've determined that your vehicle needs more repairs, so you're going to take it to the dealership. Yeah, I get it. All right.
And one thing that we always do, and this is kind of regardless of recovery, we're honest with people, but also saying, when you start winching on a vehicle and it's been stuck, and you never know if you've got a broken or bent brake line, or if your steering is not aligned correctly, or if you've got a bunch of mud or snow in your tires. There's a lot of things. So just kind of general liability, we always recommend people, take their vehicles and have them checked out after recoveries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm in Monument, and I know Shoebarth, and I know all of those trails right up there. And was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago that the reason you mentioning that is that vehicle was frozen in that river all winter, wasn't it? Do you guys remember that one?
I don't
know if maybe you didn't recover it.
We did one.
We've done a couple river ones, but I don't remember one that was frozen.
Yeah, there was one in the Gulches.
That doesn't mean we didn't do it.
Was an XJ that somebody had reached out. I think Forest Service requested we go and get it, and it had been down there for a couple of years, and they had taken all the tires and wheels off of it. Like, we had to bring in new tires and wheels and everything to get on it.
Really? Well, I don't even know where that would have been buried at. I feel like I would have seen it. So, all right.
It was not far from the popular spot on one of the Gulches.
It was a Subaru or a Nissan or something, and it got itself into a creek, and its rear axle it basically spent, like, it flooded all the way up most of the back seat, and I imagine that was a interesting recovery for somebody. So my lesson to everybody would be, don't go by yourself. Don't take your Nissans out in the snow. And just wait, it's going to melt, and then you can all go out and enjoy it. And then we don't have to worry about getting you out of there. So, so Kimi, you guys are completely volunteer, right? You guys, it's all volunteer. Like, no personal funds. People pay for their own gas and stuff like that.
Yep. It is all personal funds. It's your personal vehicle. It's your gas. Everything is yours. The org doesn't have the infrastructure really to support.
Yeah, and that's kind of going to be our next kind of iteration of where we're headed, is to help cover some of those costs.
That makes sense.
Because as I mentioned earlier, it's a fixed resource. We're doing more and more missions every year. We'll hit close to 300 missions for 2024, I'm sure. And
we've been averaging 300 for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
It was 270 last year.
And we've got members that, we're logging mileage. We've got members that, will put 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 miles per year on their personal vehicle, covering all their own fuel and everything. So that's one of the things we're looking to help, is just to cover the expenses. But definitely it's all still going to be a volunteer organization, where people are still volunteering their vehicles, their equipment, their time, in order to, to meet the goal of what we're trying to do.
That's really important to differentiate too between, like, we are a state recognized search and rescue organization,
Right.
But county funded and county recognized search and rescue gets funded. And those are like county owned vehicles and county owned supplies. And like, yeah, there's individual and like personal expenses for sure. But ours is entirely personally funded. It's my vehicle, it's my gear, it's my everything, right? Like there's no
right. It's not just your time. It's actual resources.
Yeah.
It's everybody knows like kinetic ropes are expensive. Tree straps can be expensive. Yeah. Well,
if you get the ones you're supposed to get, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And right. And if you use them, like if you use them a lot, like I replace my winch line like every 2 years because I know that I'm only using it so much. Like you test it and you clean it out and stuff like that, but you only replace the synthetic every couple of years because I'm not using it every weekend like you guys are at. Mm-hmm. But I imagine those, you guys got, even if you're using steel, that you guys got to be burning through cables on a regular basis. You got to be burning through winches, right?
We have a member. How long has Mike been with? Mike Burnett has been with the org for I don't know how long, but this man, Mike drives a power wagon. Her name is Miss Pearl, and she has like 20 million pairs of action tracks on her. And Mike bulk orders rope from Safe Extract. He bulk orders like the org. He's like, hey, I'm doing an order, and people like chip in, right? And we'll like splice out rope.
1,000 foot of rope at a time.
He'll get like stupid amounts of rope at a time, and then we like splice it up and make different winch lines, and people kind of all like put it in and like cover shipping and whatever.
I mean, that's awesome. Yeah. At least that's a group buy you guys can get in on.
For sure. But he's your like rope expert.
But I'm sure he's shouldered a lot of it on his own. Like you guys aren't reimbursing him for anything he's not getting paid for.
No, it's individual members who are like, oh, you're like putting in an order. Let me get 60 feet for my winch. Let me get this for this extension. I want this, I want this line. I want this line.
But all gear. And I mean, I've done it with mine, broken a winch line on a recovery. That's on me to replace that for the next recovery. Or just short winch line for the time being.
I would love to know what my total.
I think we've all done that. Yeah. You don't always need, like in Colorado, if you're listening to this and you're out west, or excuse me, you're out east, or where you're someplace where you tend to need the longer winch line to get someplace. A lot of time, I haven't needed a winch line that's probably longer than 50 feet of a pole in order to get to a tree and then get myself out of a bad situation.
So today is like 60-ish.
The other thing that does, you're reducing the amount of line, the number of wraps on your drum for your winch, and you're going to have more torque, right? So higher loads than you will if you've got a full drum. And we all carry extensions, right? So we can, if we run 50 feet, but we need to go 200, then you get with 2 or 3 other guys. You say, how many feet of extension do you have? I've got 100 foot. I've got a 50 foot. You piece them together, and
I got a tree strap. And like you called out earlier, JD, like don't wheel alone. Even on recoveries, we're going out with minimum 3 rigs. Typically,
2 would be a bare minimum, but usually 3 to 4.
Usually,
how many? What's your? As a side question, then, what's your max? Like how many? What's the most vehicles you've had on a recovery at a single time?
No, it totally depends.
We did one recovery. This was a Jeep up around the Georgetown area a couple of years ago. We brought in 2 teams of probably 7 each, 7 or 8 each in order to do that. So the first team went and just was up at 13,000 feet.
That was Argentine, wasn't it? Yeah,
I think it was Argentine. Yeah, we spent the first 6 or 7 guys. We're there for 5 hours getting it back up on trail, and then the second team came in to dead tow it back out.
Yeah,
and we've done that.
I think we had a good 12 or 14 people on that one mission.
That 2 teams coming in from each side, right? So you've got 4 guys on each side, roughly 4 humans, right. I would say, coming in to get this vehicle and like work depending on location. The size of the recovery matters a lot. We had last spring, there were 6 or 7 Jeeps. There was a club that got stuck. I don't remember what trail they were on, but there was a club that got stuck.
I think they were on like a Bunt school.
Something like that. County. It was, but there were like 6 or 7 Jeeps that got stuck. So we sent we
sent about 6 or 7 in.
I think we sent 6 or 7
just to have manpower. And also, especially when you're at high altitude and you're trenching through feet of snow at a time, you wear out super fast.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need the extra bodies there to help
So
spread.
so people can take longer breaks. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you can be.
And you may want the vehicles to get bodies out. Like that one, we knew that there were a good 15 plus people.
Yeah,
so
if we,
even though we only needed maybe 4 or 5 Jeeps from our or 4 or 5 vehicles to get the stuck parties out, we wanted to make sure we had enough space for the bodies who were on that trail.
If we needed to, call the recovery and say, hey, we'll come back another day, we needed enough empty seats to extract them all.
Right. Because the first mission is the search and rescue part, is to find and get the people out and make sure that they're safe. Right.
Yeah.
Life and limb, for sure, and property third.
Yep.
Because I love my Jeep, but I definitely would like to not spend the night on a mountain in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you think the one on Argentine was the most complex recovery you guys have ever done with that many vehicles?
Oh,
that rollover.
No, I don't even know that I could
the one
pick
Nikki keeps saying.
one that was the most complex. We did an FJ Cruiser up north of Walden. That I think that was a 3-day mission. We had a team up there that actually
were
camped
camping
on site. They spent about 3 days getting that. The issue on it is they parked and then just didn't put the parking brake on, or got left in neutral and just went over the edge and went down, 500-600 feet and turned through trees and rolled over rocks and a bunch of different stuff. So we had
sounds like the Black Bear Pass one.
But we're running, I think they had 8 or 9 redirects from this tree over to this tree over to this tree just to get down to them. And it was pretty complex.
That was almost a recovery where somebody said hey, you get to use all of your gear. Go.
Yeah.
No restriction. Use everything you have in your trucks. Have fun.
Yep.
I mean, that was the coolest part about when I started doing some of that stuff, when it was kind of the wild west of recovery, and I have all this cool new gear, I've never used any of it before. Now I can go out and use it. I can only imagine if somebody called me up at 2:00 in the morning and go, you know what, all that, that $2,000 worth of gear that you have in the back that you've been dying to use, now's your chance.
Yeah. I feel like it was Christmas for some of the guys.
Yeah.
It's I get to use all of my toys, and my wife said that I couldn't buy these, and I did, and now I get to use it, and I told her.
There's part of it. There's part of it that's getting out of the house and getting to play with your toys. Look, we're adults, Jeff. We can have a conversation man to man right now. We're grown ass men with wallets and credit cards and big toys.
It's dangerous.
We all have expensive toys, JD. I also have an expensive toy that I have.
You do. I
do.
I gotta give. So real quick, what are you driving, Kimmy?
I have a 2016 JKU.
All right. And Jeff?
I'm in a 2015. excuse me. 2015 JKU Rubicon.
So I don't want to say that we're a Jeep state. But I've had a hard time running into people that aren't Jeep owners. I see Toyotas.
I will say, I won't speak because I don't have the stats up in front of me, but the number of Toyotas is extremely close to the number of Jeeps that we recover.
Let me just say, TRD
really
not mean that you are trail ready.
No. It's a marketing term, guys. Yeah.
That's not just a dig at Toyotas. We recover a lot of stock sports vehicles.
Yeah. Every now and then we recover buggies. People will call us for different things.
Buggies, ATVs. We've got a couple calls out for some ATVs that are stuck right now.
Yeah, nobody's immune to being stupid or getting themselves in a bad situation. I have, we were in Grand Junction, far away from where I could have gotten some help from you guys at that point. And I popped a tire, and it would have been nice to have some help there because I found out my jack was broken, and then I do, and you guys will probably hate me, but I'm the kind of person who I am a backcountry wheeler. I don't really do the hard stuff very often, but it's usually just me and a satellite messenger, and and some safety precautions and stuff like that. But yeah, every once in a while you pop a tire and you wish you had somebody you could call.
Yes,
so.
Yeah. And since you brought that up, particularly from the satellite messenger, so one of the things we do is we run our own dispatch system. So we have volunteers that man our phone lines, and if you ever call our phone line, if nobody answers, leave a voicemail. We'll get back to you. But you can also send an SMS text message
to that
our
dispatch
hotline,
number,
and that will go to our dispatcher. So you can do that from your GPS message.
Yeah, have that programmed in your InReach or whatever you carry.
And I mean, honestly, SMS is sometimes more accessible than getting a voice message out too. So it's just that's a great tool. And I'll make sure to include the phone number in the show notes. I probably should have included it here on the air, but
make it flash right on the screen right now.
I'll put it. I can put it in the post. I can do that actually. I feel. Yeah, no, I got fancy tools these days. It's amazing. Yeah. The phone number that you're seeing flashing on your screen right now while we're talking about this. See, I did that right there.
Get in your phone now.
722 exactly.
722 120.
Say that one more time, Jeff.
720-722-1204.
One more time.
There you go.
What's bad is it's going to read wrong. It's going to read backwards.
Go the other way that you're pointing.
I can figure it out. I'll flip the video. I can do something. I've gotten very creative now when I get to this. Do you usually get a lot of calls in the middle of the night, or is that typically like what's the average time of night for you? Because most people wait all day, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's stuck, I think one of the first things, there's a bit of embarrassment. I never say that anybody got stuck for being stupid. Sometimes, but
stuff happens.
Usually it's just an accident or something along those lines.
Or something went wrong. We do a fair number of trail fix recoveries, right? It's not just you went and got stuck, like something broke. Your rig could have been like that Wheeler Lake one. That guy's rig was perfectly maintained. He clearly knew what he was doing. He and his buddy were like trying to solve it.
And lost a drag link. Yeah. Right.
Happens.
I mean, you have mechanical breakdowns, that all that kind of stuff can happen. Yeah.
So generally, kind of answer your question, people will tend to sit there and hope that somebody comes by that can help.
Or they've exhausted all their options, problem solved. And
once it gets later in the day, if they don't have service, they may have to hike out, right? Which adds, hours to when they get a hold of us. But usually starting around probably 4 to 6 p.m. in the evening, we'll start seeing calls roll in. Or we'll get calls in the morning that was people that were extracted by search and rescue the previous night.
PD
will say, hey, search and rescue came and got me, but I need help going to get the car. So those will usually come in the morning. But we do have an emergency response team as well. So when we get calls, usually through 911 dispatch, we'll forward calls to us and say, hey, we've got this situation. Somebody's been out there. Particularly if it's during a snowstorm or if it's super cold, they could mobilize the county search and rescue team, but they also understand if we can go and get them, then they're going to be able to drive home. They're not going to have to look for somewhere to put them up, and all of those things. So
better all around.
We do get those calls, and we have a special line for government agencies to be able to contact us so that we know that that's coming in from a government agency.
And even through some of those calls, it's going to be faster for us to get to the human because of our vehicles than it is for search and rescue to hike in or mobilize, whatever. But it is a good reminder that it does take time for us to mobilize, right? We're all volunteer. We're primarily based on the Front Range. So we do cover the state. We will go pretty crazy distances to help.
Like you're getting these guys off their couches to come out and do this stuff in the middle of the night when you call them.
So if you're looking at, like Switzerland Trail, for example, we think, well, it's not that far, but if you're coming from central Denver,
it's an hour.
It's a minimum hour just to get up there to the trailhead, plus however long on trail once you get there.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't say that we have a quick response, but we definitely
we mobilize pretty quick.
We mobilize pretty quick. It just takes some time, just drive time to get to some of these places.
Drive time or ski traffic, right? Something out by Georgetown, like.
Oh yeah, don't even get me started on that.
Right, it's there's so many factors that depend on it. We don't have a team that's just based in that county that just responds to that county. We're all over.
Yeah, I mean we have responders. I'd say from all over the state,
to Fort Collins,
but really, Front Range heavy. So anytime, we're almost always sending people from Denver, from Fort Collins, from Colorado Springs, going west, right up into the mountains where the trails are.
Yeah.
So it just takes a little bit of time.
So what is your approximate service area? Do you guys consider the whole state? The whole state?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's, definitely some immediate service areas where we say, if your call from this area, we generally will get to you that same
Clear
day.
Creek,
Clear Creek County, Boulder
Doug,
County, Larimer
Teller.
County, yeah. Douglas County, Jefferson County.
Basically
County.
anything that's touching the city and county of Denver. We'll get to pretty
right. Yeah, the bottom of Colorado Springs, Rampart Range there to the Bunt School area in Fort Collins.
Yeah, and we've got a pretty good squad out in Eagle too, who will cover like Eagle Vale. We've got a little pot of guys out there who will jump
a guy in Breckenridge that does a lot of stuff out there as well. So, and we've got a Southwest team that's down in the Durango area that can recover. It's a little bit different down there. We don't get very many calls for that area.
Because the Leos cover like those heavy, right? Like Black Bear, the sheriff's office is going to come in and cover. They don't need our help. They got it, right? Like, so there's some of those factors that change our scope across the scope.
You know what, honestly, and probably side off topic, but that is one of those situations where I almost wish the sheriff would lean more on volunteer organizations instead of blasting off-roaders in the press. Because we're willing to make, we're willing to help, fix some of these problems, but you're just not willing to help us. So
are you talking about the ass clowns, JD?
It was quoted in the press.
It was, that's because it was a rehearsed and staged line that he had prepared after he had set up a confusing situation with him in the county and whether or not the trail was open or not. So
we watched that one. We watched that.
Yeah. No, I have very strong feelings about that whole situation.
It's like the social media aspect of off-roading now is wild. Like, can we just call that out for a second? The fact that
no, I mean, that's got to make your guys' life more difficult, right? Because they're not necessarily going to like the trails off roads and getting the information.
It's a really interesting environment to work within, right? Because we have people blasting information out on social media. Like, so for that example, right? People were saying, "Hey, Black Bear's open," but not necessarily like I wouldn't automatically think to go fact check with the county or whatever. I probably should, but like that's not the first thing I do. Is like
you're not the first person on this podcast to have said that out loud. Yeah, it's
right. Like it's not your automatic to go check the X or whatever and go see like what the status is. It should be. We should all be in that habit, but there's a lot of word of mouth that lives in this community and this realm and like how we operate.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I'm glad that like this podcast, for example, there's a big education aspect. And, we were talking earlier that, with side-by-sides, once, those haven't been around that long. But what it really did is it made, this kind of off-road recreationing accessible to a tremendous number of people that didn't necessarily grow up with it. Right. So those of us that kind of grew up with it, we know the etiquette, we know the rules, we know, hey, this is where you go, look at the MVUM to see what's open and closed. Yeah. But there's a massive group of people now that are recreating in the backcountry that don't have that background. And that's the piece of it's
not even the driving background though. Necessary. It's just like growing up here. Like I didn't grow up trail riding. I bought my Jeep during COVID and was like, here we go, full send.
Yeah.
But I grew up camping.
That's a fun way to do it though. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
It was great. But I grew up camping and like being a junior park ranger and like all of this stuff where it's like still that stay the trail, still we respect it. We take stuff out. We like, right? You don't go step on XYZ. It's so like no way am I bashing transplants, but like there's
I myself am a transplant, so I'll stand up for some transplants. But I was also a Boy Scout.
I get the gold star.
There you do get the gold star. I think part of it is transplants. I also, and I've been trying to champion this idea too, is that there's a vested interest in me getting the Jeep that I brought to the trailhead through the trail in one piece and then back out in one piece. And then so I can get it back home. These guys a lot of these are trailered in and they can trailer them out. So if you break it, it's not that big a deal. It's not as big a deal. What's up, sir? You want to talk about how you broke something?
I went to Winter Jamboree and I typically trailered out. I never trailer my Jeep anywhere. I do kind of overland style. And I've been from Montana down to Big Bend and from Death Valley all the way to the Everglades. And I just drive the Jeep everywhere. But
Got what,
going
250,000?
to Winter Jamboree, I said over 250,000 miles on the Jeep. Going to Winter Jamboree, I said I'm going to put it on a trailer just in case I break something because I'm not planning to.
What did you do?
I broke something.
See, I think you kind of predetermined your destiny there. Like by trailering it, you were going to break it. Mm-hmm.
But you've got a point. Like my daily driver.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go out and do things, but it has to come home with me. Like I can't have it break on trail, right?
I have a much more vested interest in being safe with it, not going full send every time. Don't get me wrong. I will hit it. I will do full send. I have done full send. It's
not though.
It's a contentious subject for some. I want to avoid, kind of bashing on one group or another. But in the same breath, I feel like this is kind of a safe space, if you will, for us to have this conversation as a community. And, we went to Puma Road, which is commonly known as LaSalle Pass here. And especially this time of year, it is ATV heavy. Let's call it that way. And we were airing down our tires on Saturday to kind of just go out because it can be a little muddy and snowy. And a couple of ATVs come around the corner. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's Saturday. I get it. And then a couple more. And then a line of 20. And then 20 more. And then 40. And then 60. And then I kid you not, we're talking 100 to 150 vehicles in a row. And it's the kind of thing where it's very obvious that you guys you have zero trail etiquette information. You guys are cutting each other off. You're digging in and out. And so in those situations, it was very disheartening at first. And then we ended up cutting the other direction, and we ended up running into the ranger who had happened to be following all of them. And then as we came back around the corner, they were being stopped by CP. They'd all been backed up it looked like Chicago at rush hour, and they were all lined up on Mark Road there, coming into to LaSalle Pass. CPW was checking registration tags, and the forest rangers were giving out tickets and the rest of it. So it's nice to see that. It was also nice to have a conversation with the ranger and have him recognize that the full-size vehicles weren't out there necessarily doing all the tearing up and stuff like that.
I think we've developed a really cool relationship with a lot of the Leos in the state. And also I think empowered a lot of our volunteers to have those conversations kind of in one-offs. We had a recovery, what was it? It was a forerunner off of Redcone and Webster. And because Webster was blocked, so they were egressing up Redcone, right? Which is not, it's a one-way trail. But because of the special situation.
Not like there's a sign there or anything. Yeah.
That's a different conversation. Please don't put me on that soapbox. Oh my God. I know. But we our guys stopped and had a conversation. We're like, hey man, here's a situation. I hear you. And we're able to kind of have that discourse of here's why it matters. And they were totally hear you. Here's our reason for going up the trail the wrong way is we're running out of water. It's cold. It was 30 degrees and 7 p.m. So it was getting dark and cold. And they're like, look, man, here's the situation. We don't usually do this. We hear you. And it was a really cool exchange of.
Yeah. And that's awesome because and I think that makes for better interactions for everybody down the road. That person's more prepared so they don't feel like they have to make that call next time. So they have extra water and they don't go out in the snow in the middle of the night. So I can't emphasize that enough, folks. This episode's going to air well before the snow is done melting, and just wait. It'll be green, and then you just have a little bit of mud to deal with.
Yeah, it'll get there. I mean, even what we ran today, it was a beautiful day out and there was still snow everywhere. There was ice. We had to pull a guy up the ice just because of the trail, but it was beautiful and it's sunny and jeans and t-shirts and it was.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun being in a place where you can wear shorts and a t-shirt out in the trail in the middle of winter. So it's February and it's kind of silly. That's all right. I love it here.
Another important thing to note and kind of throw out is we're not a law enforcement agency. Right. So we work really closely with sheriff's offices. We work real close with the Forest Service.
We're partners, but we are not part of them.
But we're not going around, right? If somebody calls us, we're not going to go tattletale on anybody and say, hey, somebody's stuck. No. What we do though is when we have a situation we can't break the law, right? So we can't go off
Right.
the empty whim, or we can't do certain things. We have that wonderful relationship where I can just pick up the phone and our dispatchers will loop in Forest Service and say, hey, here's a call that we got. We need to go get this person. They're off trail or they're so-and-so. And, we almost always get the permission to go and do that. There's only been one or two situations where they said we'll go in, with a different team or something like that.
Yeah.
But they understand that when we're going in there, we're taking care of the land, so to speak, and we're not going to go in and tear things up. And
you're not just trained on the actual recovery piece; you're trained on making sure that you do right by your surroundings and making sure that you're trying to cause as little or no more damage than the situation that has put you where you're at.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and like that kind of tags. This is my other soapbox. Everybody wants videos of our recoveries. Our videos are so boring because we take so much time and energy to make sure that we're not doing damage, that we're safe, that like everything is good, that people are on the same page, that we don't have one guy over there doing something squirrely and we're rigging something, right? Like our recoveries are not fast. They are not exciting. It is not some like quick yank, yay! Like it is very thought out and very planned and intentional. And
like there's like if you're listening to this episode, like there, and feel free to check out your guys' Facebook page. I know you've got some of the diagrams that you've used over the years to kind of help in your planning efforts and stuff like that. And you'll see the videos on YouTube, and a lot of them are edited because, it's good to edit these videos and have them as kind of a reference to the work you did and how, what it is that you do. But these are edited, they're sped up. I will tell you, as a person who does not only videos for the podcast, but I do it for Trails Off Road, and I do it for, myself and a couple of other places. A lot of what you see is a lie. So if you see that 10 minutes of video that shows this recovery and they hooked everything up and then they were out and off the top of the mountain, it actually took 10 hours. Because then they did some rigging and then they stopped to make sure everything was good and check everything else. And then they did some rigging and then they moved it a foot and then they double checked everything. And then
in like
it's a very,
5 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, winch for 5 seconds, stop, readjust everything. Winch for 5 seconds, stop, readjust, right? Like it's not, we just sit here for 5 minutes and like bring this vehicle up. It's touch. Oh, that went weird. Let's like try again. What was the car above Wheeler?
Oh, the Xterra.
The Xterra.
Yeah.
The video I posted was 2.5 minutes, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
We were up there for like 11 hours total. That day was long.
Day.
Like that was so much time, and it boiled down to 2 minutes.
Yeah. It's it's one of those things.
Like if you look, there is one where you're like, oh, there it moved, but we were moving the whole time. And if you're paying attention, it's bumping.
We'd move it 6 or 8 inches, and then we'd stop and move it the other way.
I think you guys need to find yourself a sponsor that does like time lapse cameras, so that you once you get to a recovery, you just set up the cameras and you let them go.
So there was one that our team did a couple weeks ago. I think Adam set it up for me.
One of our guys had set up a GoPro and just filmed it.
Yeah, and then did it. Put it up on the tree line, and it was super cool. But the thing is, with that, like, this is the other thing that we hear a lot at like booths or community events or whatever, is like, why didn't you set up camera equipment? Why didn't you film it? Well, because our primary goal is not to film this, right? We're a group coming in to get this vehicle, get these people, whatever. Our goal is not to capture this footage. Anything extra we can get is wonderful. That's usually why I go on recoveries, is to get footage and get pictures and whatnot. And I'm not actively rigging, right? Like my job is to capture footage, make notes. I'll do like Instagram, like reel blasts or whatever as we go through the day. But like your average,
but somebody just out there doing a recovery, they got the stuff to focus on.
I don't want them to spend more time setting up a camera than they are thinking about where to hook the winch line to. And, doing the load calculations and all that stuff. So to those critics, it's fun content, but it's not our mission. Right. So,
and I think, and I don't know what your guys' do you guys you're going to obviously be looking to do some fundraising in the future, and I'm sure that'll play some part into it. Obviously, we kind of live in a gig economy where you kind of need to have the social media out there to be viable as a person, let alone a business or an organization. So, it's to that end, Kimmy, it sounds like you're going to be getting some additional duties, just be on site for video and audio editing.
I already do. I think
I was about to say, you probably wear enough hats as it is, don't you?
Yeah. It's important to call out too, though, that like we said earlier, like we're all volunteers. So the majority of us also have a full-time big kid job. Right? So for me, for example, like I'm a PM at a hospital. So that is my full-time 40 to 50 hour a week job. And then on top of that, I'm doing editing or content or like trying to engage with membership or whatever.
Or scheduling interviews with weird podcast hosts. Yeah.
Well, random guys who reach out. They drive yellow Jeeps.
They drive yellow Jeeps and claim to be a Colorado resident. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, and claim to be a Colorado human. And but yeah, you work through the 8 hours too, and then also answer calls all the time and dispatch. You've been dispatching while you're on vacation. Like all of our members do go like above and beyond, and we're the rare ones who are not married and don't have kids and don't have like all of those other obligations, right? We have a lot of people who have families and like
I'm constantly amazed by the amount of guys and gals that you have come out and do this, and I know full well that they've got families at home. They've got 2 or 3 kids. I've seen them on the trail before.
Yeah. There's a lot who, I mean, we blew up. We got a bunch of recoveries like right when school started, and everyone's like, sorry guys, it's like back to school. I have to play dad right now. I gotta be super mom right now. Like I can't do this too. So how do we juggle that and balance our like personal life with this like valuable venture?
Yeah. I mean, so what I would say is that, if you're listening to this and if you live in Colorado and if you don't live in Colorado, frankly, anybody who's doing anything for the community as a whole. So I will tell you that, I work with Trails Off Road. I do a bunch of write-ups for them and to kind of do all that stuff. Like there's parts of that are thankful as it being a thankful job. And then there are large parts of it that are not being thankful. Like we go out there and update on a regular basis. I worked with the sheriff in Clear Creek County to keep Saxon Mountain open when they started to have a lot of rockfall issues and things like that. So we all spend a lot of individual time doing this stuff, and we have full jobs. I have a full-time job at a cable company, and I work during the day, and I do this stuff in my spare time. And part of the reason I do it is because I love it. I mean, definitely not making enough money to make a living off of it, and I'm sure you guys aren't. Like you guys, this is not there's no money in it at all for you guys right now. In fact, if anything, it's the opposite. You're donating your own money and time to the organization. Yeah.
I mean, that's
not complaining.
No. It's just a statement of fact. Yeah, exactly.
I don't have the pamphlet in front of me. It's over there. I'll send you one, JD. But I think we walked like 88,000 miles last year, some ridiculous mileage across 207.
It adds up real fast. Yeah, it adds up real fast. You guys are doing 300 recoveries and 3 or 4 vehicles per.
Well, and I think my words are not going to be right here, but
we'll fix them in post.
Great, thanks. JD's gonna.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. I'll send you a link, and then you just got to record like 2 things, and then I'll just slice it in later. Yeah. It'll sound totally natural.
It's super natural. It's like glitched.
Yeah, exactly.
But this, it is a net zero. That's just a fact. It's net negative. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of money. It's time away from your family. People went out on like Christmas Day this year. There's a sacrifice to it, but all of our members choose to do this and love it. And it's thankful, right? Like I come from an EMS background, so not everybody is happy to see you when you show up. Everyone is always happy to see us when we show up.
I mean, that is a valid statement, right? It's like there's got to be big smiles when those Jeeps roll up. Yeah, that's awesome.
Nobody's ever
there's been like,
oh no, Colorado 4x4s here.
Maybe 3 that I've ever heard about that it was like an intoxication. There was like a domestic violence one that we rolled upon, but like 3 out of almost
Hundreds,
1,000, if not more than 1,000 at this point, right? Like,
oh yeah, for sure, way more than
a very small handful where they're like, oh boy, who's this? Why are you here?
Yeah, I always tell people, like, that's just a statistical. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
When you sample a certain amount of the public. Yeah.
And a lot of times those it's not them calling us, right? It's somebody else saying, calling the sheriff's office and saying, hey,
this one's
wanted
stuck.
to report some people that were stuck up here.
Yeah.
And, then us going and taking a look and not knowing what we're rolling into. But those are pretty rare, fortunately.
And again, we're not law enforcement. So we roll in and see what we can do to help, not, hey, give me your name and your license and like I'm gonna go rat you out.
What do you guys see for 2024 for Colorado 4x4 Rescue and Recovery? You think you're gonna be looking at a bigger agenda, or you think it's kind of in the same? And I know we kind of touched on whether or not you're gonna kind of start asking for actual donations and stuff like that. Is that something that's gonna happen this year, or?
Well, we've always asked for donations, right? And we have a certain amount of operating costs, as does any search and rescue team. And so we ask for that to cover our dispatching equipment, our software, our web licenses, all of
telephone lines. Yeah.
All of that kind of like basic infrastructure, storage, that kind of thing. Our big push is to reimburse members. That's something that we hear a lot, right? Times are kind of tough. Yeah. We'd love to be able to give some back to our membership who have given so much. I think what's cool in 2024, we actually just restructured the board, which is cool. And we've built in a few more like director level positions that have some freedom and some like more liaison advocacy for the membership. Because I think, I mean, you kind of came in at the start, right? Like, this organization was developed by the membership.
It is definitely, right? It has grown and kind of by necessity, and those. Is there any organization as it gets older, it requires that you kind of make adjustments and personnel and people.
There's been some bumps over the years. I think one of our like founding members, I think he was member number 4 or 5, Doc Bunger. He writes like a history series for us on the org. It's on our website, actually.
It is a very long read, but it is fun to read.
It is a long read, but it's very good. If you're bored and would like to go down a rabbit hole, I recommend it.
I'm very much a rabbit hole. We talked about that at the beginning. Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's lovely. But he calls out in like the recent installment, there were some bumps in 18, 19, 20. Yeah. And the membership kind of reclaimed some accountability and power.
As you do with most organizations.
Yeah.
Right?
Everything ebbs and flows a little bit, especially new organizations. You're still learning, right?
Yeah. And from a strategic perspective, I don't necessarily think we're going to have, a massive surge. I don't think we're going to double or triple the number of recoveries we do this year.
We'll stick roughly around 300, most likely.
We want to continue to serve, our kind of regular routine callers that call and request help, which is just kind of dispatched through us, and we go and cover those. But we also work really closely with some of the emergency managers. Especially some of those out on the Eastern Plains. They have, tend to have blizzards and stuff.
I would say that's our weird thing for this year is the last couple years we've had a pretty heavy January, February, March blizzard response out west or out east. Yes, knock on wood.
But we have a pretty large number of command staff that are all trained in incident command, ICS. NIMS, and so we integrate really well for large kind of emergency response events, and that's something we're going to continue to push and build those relationships
and the training.
There are some counties out there that are actually using kind of us as part of
their instant command and
their
response.
emergency response plan for if we have a blizzard event, how are we going to get to individuals and rescue them? And they're incorporating Colorado 4x4 rescue and recovery in those.
This is a pillar that we're going to rely on in an emergency. Yeah.
And once again, goes to the difference between, we're not just an off-road club, we're not an off-road club at all, but we're a formal professional search and rescue organization.
We're an all
let's be clear. This started as an off-road club. I mean, it started as an off-road page. It's not that anymore. And if you're listening to this and you need to use it, you're going to be getting a bunch of professionals now that they may be responding from their couches, but they know what they're doing. They've done some training. They've done
like
yeah.
Here are guys just leave in the truck. I live downtown, so like I won't leave my gear in my car. But the amount of gear that people leave so that they're ready to roll, right? There. Like they can throw on their warm gear and like walk out the door. Is kind of incredible. And I think something to call out too is there's a couple of like still Good Samaritan Facebook groups with very similar names. Make sure you get the right one, please.
Yeah, make sure you call. Just call the phone number. Just call the phone number, which is I've got it now. Call the phone number, which is 720-722-1204.
Perfect.
And that's Colorado 4x4 rescue and recovery. That whole thing, guys. So
and I think
what about people who are, if somebody's interested in volunteering, take it you guys are always bringing on new volunteers?
So that was something we changed up a little bit last year. We're doing volunteer new member onboarding. We're doing 2 cohorts every year. So we're going to start in March. We've got 3 kind of introductory sessions. All that should be posted on the website and on the Facebook group. So you can come to the introductory session.
To attend one introductory session.
And what we really do is we kind of lay out, this is how we operate as an organization, and these are the expectations of members, right? Because we do, even though it's all volunteer, it's not just somebody saying, well, I want to volunteer because I have a Jeep and a kinetic rope. Saying, hey, you have to go take this recovery training. You have to take these incident command classes or these NIMS classes. You have to take this leadership course. You have to understand how volunteer organizations work in this capacity.
We did the math, and it's like minimum a $1,500 commitment just to join and be like a base level to get your training, have very minor gear,
go through a certain number of ride-alongs with the other team,
and that includes like gas and stuff for those recoveries.
Yeah. But it's something to note, right? Like if you're. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from volunteering. It's just you got to be aware of it's a commitment. It's a time, and it's money, and it's gas, and it's energy. It's a lot of energy.
People have heard that and gotten frustrated with like seeing that there's like a training plan and expectations and like classes and whatnot. But if you are joining like Summit County Search and Rescue, you're gonna take all of these, right, and like bring this expertise, and we want your off-roading expertise, but there's more to this and off-roading and safety than just I have a Jeep, I've been off-roading since.
Exactly. And here's the thing: if I'm in a pinch and I'm in trouble, I don't really care who it is that rescues me, but if I'm in a situation like here in Colorado where I have an organization that I can look to you guys, like you guys, that is a professional organization, you guys have done the work to make it continually better and to continually, you train your guys, you use math and geometry. There's a lot of folks out there with just a winch line and a hope that they're going to get it done. That might get you out of the hole, but I'd much rather have somebody that knows what they're doing and do it right and make sure that I get my vehicle back in the best condition I can possibly get it.
Not pulling bumpers off and not, breaking wheels and.
What was that? I think it was out of Texas, right? They put a tow strap around a hitch ball.
Oh, the hitch ball. Yeah, that's that one makes the rounds every once in a while.
True. Yeah.
And I think that stuff happens way more than we know, and because I don't think people post their fails to Facebook. They don't want people to know that they hosed up so bad.
Well, there's that, and I think we work really tightly with Colorado Search and Rescue Association, so CSAR, and we talked about this a lot. I work with their like main PIO all the time. And there's part of search and rescue and part of like our job as the information human is it's called PSAR, preventative search and rescue. You never know what education methods that you've put out have worked.
Right.
So we have 270 rescues, 300 rescues a year. I don't know what other 50, 100, like who knows that we've prevented or other teams have prevented by podcast education, by putting out Facebook posts, by like we have no idea what that number is, and we never will. It's not measurable.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I think you guys might be able to kind of get a better idea of that scope. I think those kinds of things get easier to measure as you kind of get larger. But still 33,000 people on the Facebook page alone.
Yeah.
And they all have that number. I think that's, as being one of those folks that was in those initial groups of cowboys just going out and winching people up with whatever you could do. It's really awesome. It's one of the things that's nice for me to have in my back pocket. Like I said, I go out on a regular basis. I try not to get myself into bad situations, but life happens, weather happens, breaks happen. And when you're listening to this and you're thinking about, I don't want to wake people up on the couch and stuff like that, keep in mind these guys like doing it. These guys and gals, they go out in the middle of the night because they enjoy doing it at some level. And don't wait to call them. Don't wait till 6 p.m. Try to call 3 o'clock or 2. Yeah.
Yeah. The sooner the better. And honestly, I mean, you said it earlier, it's an excuse for us to go play with our toys. We put a lot of time and money and like thought toys. They're toys.
Tools. No. I like this justification. It's getting later in the evening. I'm good for that. Yeah.
I'll tell your wife, JD, they're tools. Please dump more money into this. And
you know what? I don't have to convince her. I had a couple of pop tires here and there in the middle of nowhere, and now she understands all.
It's fine.
You want to buy what now? That's going to do what? That's going to drive us off the. Okay, that's fine. Sure, no problem. Then I'll see you there.
One of our longtime members, he's a former president. He put a picture in our like Facebook group the other day of. He's like, you found the right woman when she lets you like organize and clean your recovery gear in the house. And it's a picture.
It's Eric. Yeah, I saw Eric posted it.
With just like recovery gear everywhere.
I feel like he's been doing it for like 2 weeks too. Like, I don't feel like this was like a one night situation. I feel like he's had his entire basement just cables everywhere. So
entirely.
Right, well, Eric,
you found the right woman. She just lets you go crazy.
I mean, my wife, she doesn't question me too much. She just tries to keep me from doing the stupid thing in the first place now. So she doesn't care about what gear I buy. Now she's real like laser focused on not allowing me to get into a situation like I have in the past.
She also does PSAR just in your house.
Boom. And she's one of those original Colorado rescue people.
Yes, she prevented JT. That is immeasurable, and we can never.
You know what? I told you guys the TJ story off air at the beginning of the episode. I will probably just tell it one night on the show as a whole. But that I feel like when I tell that story, and then I follow it up with, and if you ever get in that situation again, don't let the cowboys in the chopped Silverado pull you out. Call these guys, call them and they can help you. And if you're looking for that number, it's 720-722-1204. See, that's old advertising, right? You got to say it at least 3 times for it to stick.
You need a catchy jingle for it, actually.
Use some judgment. We've had some people that have called, and I've dispatched calls where they say, "Hey, we've got somebody driving up the trail. Maybe they'll help." And depending on the situation, sometimes I go, "Oh, okay, you just need somebody to winch you back 2 feet, and you'll be good. Not a big deal." And then I've had others that have been on the phone, and it's been like, "Hey, we're almost about to roll off the side of the mountain, and we've got a 200-foot drop." And I go,
"This guy in the truck said he'd help."
Yeah, the guy in the truck said he'd help. And I go, "Well, if I were you, I would wait until we get a couple of experienced guys there." And, we definitely don't have to do every recovery in the state of Colorado by any means. But there's definitely some things that show up that we have a lot of experience in doing and doing safely.
Yeah, all the engineering. I think we called it out on our pamphlet, right? That like not everything is like a fall risk or whatever. There's mechanicals. And I think a really cool one that demonstrates just the knowledge base of our volunteer team was the Suburban that the control arms were like literally like 90-degree bent.
Oh yeah.
The Forest Service asked us to go and get this, and a scout team went out. So here's another one. You asked how many guys went out. We sent a scout team out of like 4 or 5 rigs to go see if it was recoverable, what the status was, try and recover it. And they sent back pictures, and we were like, holy cow, like the control arms are literally like 75 degrees. Like they are
right. Those aren't supposed to be at that angle.
busted. Yeah. They are. We're not going to get this thing out unless we get those fixed. And sent pictures back, and we posted them out to our membership. And one of the guys,
we had some fabricated the next
fabbed
day.
them up overnight. He's like, I think these will work. I like found the specs online. I fabbed them up. I drilled holes. Here you go. And went out, and I mean, it was a long day, but they like
they put them on and
drilled them out and got that thing off the trail. But it's like the technical expertise. It's not just the wheeling.
It's some amazing ingenuity. It sounds like too.
There's wicked adaptability. We have a bunch of engineers, and just like the brain power and thought that goes into it. It's not just we'll connect to that tree over there and do this. Like,
we did another one. Bill and I went with Boulder County. They had located a Bronco that had been out there for like 3 years, and so we were going to look at it, and we knew that it had a broken sector shaft on it. And so when we get there, we were like, okay, we took pictures and said, hey, we brought an extra tie rod. Let's just pull the tie rods off, put one tie rod to lock the tires together, and we pulled it out with no steering wheel.
I mean, yep. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
Have the experience and the ability to do that.
Yeah.
There's MacGyvering, and then there's MacGyvering with some knowledge. MacGyvering with some knowledge behind it.
That exact same technique at a winter jamboree for one of my guys. His steering went out, and we pulled him back, and I think the bolts had sheared off of his steering box, off the gearbox, and so he had he would turn the wheel, but the gearbox just shifting back and forth.
Yeah.
We're able to get him off, but yeah.
Wow. There's a whole lot of knowledge and wisdom behind it, and teaching, right? Like there's teaching from older membership to younger membership, or more experienced, whatever the case may be, right? But there's also trail teaching to the subject. And we do try and involve them in what we're doing and why we're doing it, and not just like, well, we're here for 6 hours. You go sit over there while we like do all this stuff. There is an element of like, hey man, like you want to learn, you want to jump in. How about this? Next time, try this. Next time.
And it's a fine line too. I mean, we definitely do some educational aspects as far as, especially if we find somebody off trail, we try to say, here are the resources. Here's where you would go and look. Here's how you learn about all this information.
Here's why it matters.
And explaining, these trails will get closed or, permanently closed rather than just seasonally closed and different things like that. And so we always try to take that opportunity to make sure and put that educational aspect out there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of a takeaway from all of this stuff is that, educate yourself on, we talked about earlier, when we go out, make sure you have the right gear, make sure you have, the right resources on board with you if you're going to go out there in the first place, and then make sure that you have a backup. Like
you need to minimum carry the 10 essentials, minimum, preferably significantly more than that.
Do you want to name those out, or do you just want me to put those in the show notes?
I would love for you to put those in the show notes.
I will put those in the show notes because you can't recall all 10 of them right now off the top of your head, can you? All right, so the 10 of them that are now
food layers.
I will say, light. You would be surprised at the number of calls that we get that we escalate to an urgent call, which means we tend to try to get there a little bit faster, just because people don't have food and water with them.
4 layers.
Yeah. And
you're driving in the winter and you don't have.
It's not uncommon for me if I'm just going back and forth to work. I'm in my vehicle. I may not have food and water in the Jeep with me, but you have to realize it's more than just a Sunday drive, right? I'm going out into the backcountry. I'm going to be miles away from services and bring food and water because we always carry extra food and water and warmth.
A lot of our guys and gals carry extra layers for potential subjects, extra food and water.
I keep emergency blankets and stuff in the Jeep.
Yeah, I keep 2 sleeping bags and a down blanket in the Jeep. And I think like maybe it's just because I grew up here, right? Like we were coming home from skiing when I was like 8 maybe. And the timing belt on like the sedan blew out. And there were 3 kids in the back. It was like 7 p.m.
And you can't run the engine.
You can't run the engine. It's on I-70, so you don't even think you need this. But for whatever reason, my mom had put sleeping bags in the car. So the 3 little kids were warm and cozy. It was like me, my brother, my cousin. And we were just like toasty chilling. But if we didn't have the sleeping bags, it would have been really miserable and potentially.
Like I don't know what the rule is, but I feel like it should be like 24 hours. Like you should be able to sustain yourself for 24 hours in the conditions that you put yourself in.
We do 72 hours. Yeah. Right. So anytime we deploy, every member that deploys should have sustenance and gear to last 72 hours in the field.
That covers you for a lot of situations.
To go 72 hours is super slim,
right.
which is a testament to the way that we operate, and we can always send in backup teams and try not to leave anybody out there. But that's kind of our minimum.
We don't leave anybody out there.
But 72 hours. But yeah, I mean, to your point, even if you're just out for a Sunday drive, make sure you got enough food and water to get you 24 hours, right?
You and everybody with you, right? And I think that's something people forget. We kind of touched on this at the beginning of like what vehicles get stuck. Like we've had an uptick in DIA and like tourist rentals getting stuck because it's a 4Runner. It says it's trail capable. They don't know that they need to carry X, Y, Z. They don't know that the MVUM. They don't know that there's no service here. They don't know. And it's a mixed bag of like, please come enjoy our environment and learn. And also like, you are enjoying our environment. You are responsible for knowing, right? And there's like
exactly
weird gray area of like, yes, you get to learn and have that opportunity to grow and like build that knowledge base. But also, you need to know and you need to be responsible for that, especially if you have kids, elders, people with medical things. You really.
I wonder if there's an opportunity there. Yeah, I wonder if there's an opportunity there to reach out to somebody at DA. Like I don't think anybody here is from DA, but if I feel like there's an opportunity to like hand out at least some brochures, like when you get your Jeep rental, and here's how not to be stupid.
Yeah, the Colorado Tourism Bureau has like a whole division that we're actually a part of. But all of their meetings are during the workday, which makes it really challenging for those of us with big kid jobs.
Yes.
To attend and give a voice to that. Because they're at like 11 a.m. on a Thursday or something like that. It's really hard to block that time in a like corporate work schedule to be able to attend those and have that voice. And so like they are trying, and I'm not trying to discredit them at all, but it does make it difficult for volunteer organizations where like it's not my day job to sit here and try and manage it. I can't.
Yeah, I've had a lot of meetings in a small break room in my office, near my office, because it's the only place I had in the middle of the day to take a call.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like I have taken up way too much of your guys' time.
You're good.
I would love to have you guys back at some point in the future. Maybe like talk about some of the harder recoveries and stuff like that, like the one in Argentine, and we've talked about having some other folks on from the organization. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed talking with you guys. Once again, the number for Colorado 4x4 Rescue and Recovery is going to be 720-722-1204. Be prepared if you go out there in the especially this time of year, guys. It's if you're living in Colorado or if you're visiting in Colorado, it can get real sketchy real fast. And as soon as that sun goes down, that slushy snow is going to turn into ice, and you might find yourself unable to get out of where you got yourself into. So just be prepared and try to be prepared. So do you guys have any other thoughts that you would like to throw out there before we close things out here and call it a night?
We're an all volunteer professional organization, and we run entirely on donations. So if
there you go.
You ever needed us, or you think you might need us and want to put some good karma in the world, we will never say no to donations. Again, our goal is to fund and give back to our membership who have given so much. I mean, it sounds like a ridiculous number. We did the math on it. When you calculate out like 88,000 miles in a year,
it's about
times gas, times
$50,000.
Yeah.
Yep. just
in vehicle maintenances and stuff. Yeah, it's kind of like the IRS tax deduction calculation.
That is fuel.
Just fuel. Okay, yeah.
Just fuel. Yeah.
Yeah.
To reiterate as well, we never charge for recoveries, and we're going to make it easy for people to donate if they want to, but we're not going to push anybody to donate.
No.
The reason that we don't want anybody to feel obligated for that is because we don't want people to hesitate to call us.
Yeah.
We'd rather you call us and let us go take care of you than try to do it on your own and get hurt, or just don't call and risk something bad.
There's some organizations around here that charge a bucket load of money. I'm sure people all saw the Lincoln the GMC
Canyon.
The GMC Canyon on Mount Lincoln recovery and the sticker price that came with that. We don't want that.
Right.
We want this to be accessible. We want people to go out and explore and learn their environment and have this tool in their back pocket. Don't hesitate to call us. We'll be there regardless.
And it looks better for the community too. Like we're self-policing at that point before it gets to the point where it's a news story about a vehicle on a 14er.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you guys very much. So that's wrapped for today's journey. We've navigated the inspiring topography of the Colorado 4x4 rescue and recovery with our guests, Kimi and Jeff. Their stories blend adventure, dedication, the community service, and reminds us of volunteers' vital role in keeping our outdoor spaces safe and accessible. Colorado 4x4 rescue and recovery and other recovery operations throughout this country are able to do this work because of these volunteers. So it's super important that we support them in any way possible. Please visit co4x4rnr.org to see how you can help. I will also include that in the show notes, so you can just go to the Trailhead Network and look for our show notes for today's show. For more off-roading tips, news, expert insights, and to join our mailing list, please visit us at thetrailheadnetwork.com. Connect with us on social media. If you've got stories or questions, you can drop us a line on our voicemail. Our phone number is 719-408-0132. Or tune in for one of our Friday Night Lives, which actually might be becoming a Monday Night Live. We'll talk about that soon. Until our next adventure, safe travels, and we'll see you next time at the Trailhead.